Hello everyone, my name is Lance Lee and I chose the second option of this prompt because I feel really strongly about the media. You know, it's something really permeating our lives more and more, and I think soon enough half of America or something around there is going to get all their news from just the media. And believe it's all true. Newspapers are on the decline. You have satire stories like The Onion coming out, and people actually believe it. So media is very powerful. I think media is really the most influential voice we hear in a campaign, even more than the candidates themselves. And the framing that media puts on female candidates really limits their ability to achieve higher levels of office. You heard it in the article we read from Mickey Kittleson and Kim Fritkin. Media influences candidates' recognition, their positions, their personality, and that's all we care about, their relatability to us. I'm going to discuss this. I'll go even further on this topic than just how media portrays women. What isn't discussed is that's not discussed in this class, is how unequal the diversity in the media actually is in the first place. This is a good question. How can media be fair when it comes to women's representation in politics when women's representation in media is just as anemic? It's just as low. My goal in this video is to show media framing. I found the book we read, Cracking the Highest Glass Ceiling, the most influential for this piece, obviously, because of how in-depth and consistently it portrayed women and how media portrayed them. So I talk about how media holds women back, I talk about how it could help women, and what I would do if I were managing a woman candidate. Okay, the first thing I'm going to discuss is how media really stops women from achieving what they want to achieve. And the first thing is appearance. The sexual stereotypes that you hear in the media about women, it has this perception of women being vain, superficial, having an extravagant lifestyle. And if women are always said to have that, then they're always going to, be vain to us. The Cracking the Highest Glass Ceiling had a great quote. It said, "Beauty in women is associated with superficiality and fragility rather than power." Sarah Palin's a good example. We were talking so much about her appearance, right? There was a study in Notes from the Cracked Ceiling. It asked men that found her attractive, would they vote for her? And the answer is no, they would not vote for her. It brought this dumb blonde environment. This idea that beauty detracts perception of intelligence. And if we're always talking about superficiality and women, then we consider them dumb because we don't hear about the issues they talk about. One of the biggest things that I saw was in Cracking the Highest Glass Ceiling, 18% of stories were about appearance with Sarah Palin, while 2% were about the environment, 1% about education, 7% about healthcare. Combine all those and it still doesn't add up to how many stories we heard about her appearance. So it makes her just seem superficial. And that's just one of the things. The second thing is the first woman and first name designation. You have the novelty of being the first woman and using a first name for a woman candidate. The problem with using a first name for a woman candidate, it gives a sense of too much warmth, something over-associated with women's issues. It gives newness, unfamiliarity. We saw that in Cracking the Highest Glass Ceiling. It doesn't give prestige and leadership that we should see from a president, something we're aspiring to, someone that's not our next door neighbor. We look up to the president. And maybe Clinton was trying to help this by making her seem less robotic, but it doesn't help women candidates. We saw numerous cases for this, like Marie Wilson, the executive director of the White House Project doing this. Talk about issue coverage. Kittleson and Fritkin, they describe in-depth issue coverage in the media. Women get questions about education and their husbands, but men get questions about policy and economic policy. So, why do men get these questions but women don't? It doesn't make them seem presidential. It's really the double bind, the mommy problem we talked about. Women issues are too left. So if a liberal candidate wanted to talk about them, then they're way too left. But if a Republican woman talked about it, it's not too bad, or a Republican man. So, issues are too liberal for a woman. So how can a liberal candidate win? She would seem way too liberal. All right, so what should the media do to portray women correctly? What can they do? How does media affect you in a positive way? The first thing, I think there should be diversity in media. This is a big thing I want to talk about. What are the statistics for women in media? Well, according to the Women's Media Center, the WMC report, 51% of overall moviegoers are women, but only 30% of the characters are women. 11% are the protagonists. The top 250 grossing films, 10% of women were directors only. 90% of directors were men. 18% overall behind the scenes were women. 30% of news directors are women. 7% of women own networks compared to men. 71% of election coverage is written by males. That's huge. How can we portray women correctly when males dominate media? That's interesting. I think another way, so we can have diversity. Another way media can portray women positively is, showing them as representatives of change. Angela Merkel was doing this. She rode in from a bad economy and a government scandal. She was a representative of change. We saw that in cracking the highest glass ceiling. It detracts from the status quo, really. Focus on women's issues in the electorate. And give women a platform, just like the feminist movement. Give them a platform to show what they can do. Show documentaries on women in history. We can do that a lot quicker in media than you can see in textbooks. In school, we can't learn that till our textbooks are updated. Media can do it immediately. Okay, so 3 quick things that I would tell women to do if I were managing them. The first one is don't put too much of your family in the spotlight. We saw this with Palin and Merkel, Angela Merkel. Palin, way too much in the spotlight. Her family, she looks like a hypocrite because her daughter was married and unwed. She was a teenage daughter. Merkel got elected because you never heard about her family, never heard from her husband. Because men don't touch it, so, let's do what men do. Also, focus on the executive experience. We saw many times that someone coming into president is probably going to have a lot of executive experience if they're women, a CEO of a company, a governor. So focus on the executive experience, not just knowing for foreign policy. Lastly, don't focus on appearance. Don't spend time looking so polished. We saw that with the expensive Palin's wardrobe all the time. We don't talk about men's wardrobe. And that's really unfortunate because, we grow up thinking women should dress really well and men too. But, that's unfortunate that we have to kind of say that because people's perception and stereotypes are so bad.